What's up, everybody? Welcome back to my channel. I'm Michael Borky. Glad to see you on this Tuesday night. And tonight we're talking about spring games. It's spring games season. The calendar has turned to April, and everybody around the SEC is getting ready for theirs. But honestly, it's kind of losing its luster a little bit. There is less and less excitement around the spring games because they're becoming less and less of an actual game, and rosters are in flux, and transfer portal and stuff has kind of dominated the conversation this time of year. And because of that, the spring games aren't really as popular as they used to be. To combat that, an SEC coach has a really, really good idea. It's not a new idea. In fact, we've spent a lot of time talking about it on the radio show, and I've talked about it on Twitter and even on live streams with you guys. So it's not a new idea, but it's a great idea, and it's a big deal that he is talking about it. This coach in particular is talking about it on such a public platform. But first, I want to invite you actually to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you have not already. And also click the notification bell. I do live streams on here, especially come football season. We'll do a lot of game reaction live streams together, so hope you will join me for those. Okay, Hugh Freeze, Auburn head coach Hugh Freeze, during a media opportunity recently, was talking about this idea, this thing that he wants to bring to their spring game, and he is all for it. And it turns out one of the coaches for the teams that he mentions is also all for it. So here's Hugh Freeze, Auburn head coach right now, talking about a really good idea to help juice up spring games.
For the solution is allow us to scrimmage somebody on a day, another team, and I think everybody would get out of it exactly what they want. And if everybody's doing that, then, and let's adopt a charity to give all the proceeds to. Let's take foster care in the state of Alabama or orphan care in the state of Alabama, and let's Alabama play Troy and we play UAB or vice versa or whoever, I don't care, or Alabama State or whoever, and people will come see that. And you're decreasing your injury possibilities by 50%. And coaches are smart enough to control, we're not going to hit each other's quarterbacks. We practice that way. And if you want to put a blue jersey or a different jersey on somebody that's don't take to the ground, we can do that. And I just think it would be great for the sport. I think it would be awesome. NFL gets to scrimmage against others. High schools get to scrimmage against each others. And I just, for the life of me, I don't understand why we haven't gotten to that point where we can pull that off.
And I love that idea for a couple of reasons. First and foremost, just entertainment value. As college football fans, there is very little to be excited about in the offseason. I've talked about that with you guys before. College football does not do a good enough job of making it a year-round sport. The NFL is a year-round sport. You have the draft, which, of course, college football can't have, so that's part of it, but you've got combine and OTAs and free agency and schedule release days and all this stuff that happens strategically placed at various points throughout the offseason to make NFL fans feel connected really all season long. College football doesn't do a good enough job of that. So having something worthwhile and entertaining just as a sports fan, as a college football fan and commentator, it would be a really cool thing. Also, being in the radio business, having football games to talk about wouldn't hurt the content side of it as well. But as a fan, the entertainment value would be great. But it also, point number two, could serve a more important purpose. As you guys know, if you've followed me long enough, I grew up on Furman football in Greenville, South Carolina. My dad and I would go to Furman games because they were cheap and it was a good program and they played really good football. And it was how I fell in love with the game so much. Those FCS games, those Furman games, I know they're on Ole Miss's schedule next year, for example. Upset alert for the Rebels. I'm only kidding. But those games matter so much to those programs. The money that they receive to play in those games does things that they can't otherwise do financially. And with conference expansion in the SEC, going to more conference games from 8 to 9. At least that's what everybody thinks is going to happen. Hasn't officially happened yet, but most people think it's headed in that direction. New television deals, probably de-incentivizing games like the FCS games and things like that are jeopardizing those kind of games. And it's not just FCS. It's also the low-profile non-conference games as well. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but attendance at those games across the country is horrible, and understandably so. You're asking fans to pay the amount of money that it takes to get to their college town and go to games and park and food and all that stuff to watch your team beat up on some nobody. It's not worth it anymore, and people aren't going to those games. And these television executives that are paying hundreds of millions of dollars a year for the games are encouraging them to stop having the games that nobody wants to see. However, those games save those programs. If you took those games away from a Furman, from an Alcorn here locally in Mississippi, or UT Martin, if you got rid of those games, even programs like Southern Miss, if you got rid of those bye games, then you would lose programs, and maybe not football programs, but to use Furman as my shining example, they had to cut their baseball team. Financially wasn't in the cards anymore. Imagine if you got rid of the bye game. What also would follow? Football programs would inevitably shut down, but other sports as well, because those bye games pay for so much of the budget of these small college athletic departments. And maybe I'm just a purist and, nobody cares about the lower levels of college football, but I want those programs to continue to exist. I want people to have the same experience that I did growing up going to those games. But more importantly, I want those young men and women that go to those schools and play sports to continue to be able to do so for free. And these bye games contribute a lot of money to that. So if Hugh Freeze's idea were to come to fruition, which I wish it would be entertaining. It would give your college towns another weekend where more fans would go. I know you wouldn't fill up stadiums, but more people would go to a scrimmage with another team and another helmet than would the regular spring game. There's no doubt about it. I've talked to enough people. I know it's a small sample size relative to a fan base at large, but I've talked to enough people to know that the attendance for a spring game that is an actual game would be better. So your small towns would have another weekend to bring people in and financially benefit from that. It would be more entertaining. And I know Hugh Freeze mentioned a charity component. I'm looking at it from a more dollars and cents perspective, a less noble cause, and more so where you could still pay this team to come in and play. Not near as much as you do during the season, I wouldn't imagine, but you can you can have a financial incentive built in as well, because the networks would air it, no doubt. ESPN in April is desperate for programming, guys. They are desperate for programming. So ESPN in April would absolutely, without a doubt, air those games. So there'd be financially, it would be a good financial move there, as well as locally. You could get it done. It does make sense. You could keep some of these bye games that keep these programs alive while also making the regular season more entertaining for the television executives and your season ticket holders and things like that. It's a win, win, win. And and Hugh Freeze mentioned, you guys didn't mention it, Hugh Freeze mentioned it, about the injury component, because the next question is, can this be done? And the answer is yes, it can be done. Of course it can be done. People just have to use their brains and figure it out and sit down, come to the drawing board, schedule it out, and make it happen. And that sounds kind of Pollyanna or easier said than done, but I remember when the schedules were completely blown up and the season just started over when COVID happened. They blew up the schedule, created an entire new one, just a couple months out from the start of the season. I think maybe inside of that, if I remember correctly. So yes, scheduling one game in the spring can be done. And more importantly, Hugh Freeze mentioned it, and it applies into the NFL as well. The NFL, the multi-billion-dollar a year enterprise with $500 million quarterbacks and $100 million defensive linemen and $150 million wide receivers, they find ways to not only have 3 preseason games, but they have joint practices, and it goes smoothly every year. The Saints are going to go and have a joint practice session, multiple practices with the Chargers this year. And they're going to have 3 preseason games that don't count, that don't matter, exhibition games, and they find ways to do that without getting people hurt. The same thing could happen in these spring games. These guys know, as Hugh Freeze mentioned, not to hit the quarterback. Put a different color jersey on them if you have to. The fans know the deal. The other team would know the deal. And he's getting that 50% number, by the way, because I saw some comments wondering where he got that from, because literally half of your team is on the field. When you're doing an inter-squad scrimmage, 22 of your players are on the field at once. When you're playing somebody else, only 11 are. It's really simple math. So if the NFL can figure it out and do it safely, not only with the joint practices, but the preseason games, college football can certainly do the same thing. It would be entertaining. It would be another reason for fans to show up. It would be financially viable. It could help preserve some of these bye games that these lesser programs desperately need. It is a perfect idea. It makes so much sense. And will it happen? Probably not. Why? Because it's too good of an idea, and it makes too much sense. And that's why it's not going to happen, because that's how it works in college sports. I like and I appreciate Hugh Freeze for bringing that idea that's kind of been tossed around on message boards and on radio shows like ours for years, honestly, bringing it to the forefront and saying, hey, why don't we do this? It makes sense. Let's UAB come to our place and we'll have a scrimmage and we'll put different color uniforms on the quarterbacks and we'll get to make some money, maybe donate it to charity, put it on TV. It makes sense. And there's less of an injury risk, and the NFL does it. High school does it. Why can't we do it? It makes too much sense, and that's why it's not going to happen. But I love that a coach is finally talking about it. Hopefully more follow his lead. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I'll see you again on the next one. Y'all have a good night.